Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hey everybody. Wow, what a crazy like last 3 videos I made yesterday are all very big and popular. So I'm glad that you guys are seeing them. I'm still just wet from a shower. And then it's beautiful outside. The weekend's here, so I can't be here all day. And we're going to have to start spending some time by the lake. So I'm going to start setting up something I can do that. Now, also, Katie sent me super chats asking when I'm going to read her New World's Fair pamphlet, and I thought I would do it today, but then I realized what I want to do is set up my GoPro vertically, and then we can go through a bunch of mail. So I'll try to do that on Monday. So Katie, stick with me. It'll be exciting. But I will go over some of the things that last night, let's see, I did 2 videos last night at least, right? Or was there 3? Because, I did the daily, and then I had a talk with Jimmy Airy Bros and his brother, and then I had another talk with Zarathustra Gertzel, which will be out eventually, which is not out yet. Okay, so you've only seen, that one's just, okay, but you did see my talk with David Ewing Jr., which has now got 3 times the views as the daily video and should hopefully continue to go well, all about basically everything that we've been talking about for the last week. His questions on the authenticity of things from the 19th century. So that's pretty good. Yeah, I would say follow, subscribe, continue it up. But it's been great watching 200 people live stream viewing, because it was a lot less than that. Now it's getting to be 100 to 200, and things are growing, so that's very good. Thank you for those of you who subscribe. Thank you for those of you who bought t-shirts. Thank you for everybody on the Patreon, etc., etc. I'm going to just remind you guys again, because I appreciate it, and in case there are new people coming all the time, Andreas, www.andreas.me. Donate button at the top. Donate in the middle. You can do whatever you want. Buy t-shirts at the bottom, right? And andreas.me/store, because if you're paying attention, this is a special store. It's a unique store compared to the other store. It has less items. They're a little bit cheaper, though. Just trying to keep everybody able to have everything all the time. Same thing at exertus.com. Go to exertus.com. You'll find the same thing. We've got a support Exertus thing. There's a bunch of information here and a support donate on top. They're different buttons. Each one does different things. I have so many options. Okay. So there's that. You can buy t-shirts there. I appreciate that you guys have been supporting me. It's really important that I'm able to make these videos because of you guys. It's just awesome. So thank you again. Yesterday someone asked a bit about what is Deseret, and then they said, what about the Christians in Japan? Like, there are Christians in Japan? How many? And I'd made videos about this before, and you can look them up on my channel if you go through the Exertus. There's a button for videos, and there's a search button. You can find all videos by Exertus. And Odyssey, you can do this as well. And you can find I have videos on the hidden Christians, the language of Deseret and the Mormons. But I'm going to go a little deeper today, because I feel like that's, we should just cover the things that people are asking about, and it's been a long time, so we're going to go over them again. Alphabets are interesting, and the fact that the Mormons invented their own alphabet, officially invented their own alphabet. This is a non-Joseph Smith alphabet, just to clear everybody up. So they're not saying Joseph Smith invented this alphabet or something like that. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And then the fact that Japan, you're like, oh, wait, how many Christians in Japan? Wait, all of them? Like half of Japan? Really? So at least half of Japan was murdered in the Edo, pre-Edo period, for being hidden Christians. And that's something interesting to bring up. So that's going to be something that we're going to talk about today. Now, I want to quickly go over the news again. Let me see if I find, what was it? The Wall Street Journal was the last thing I ended with yesterday. I want to bring it back up again because this was really off topic yesterday, and I felt like it was important to bring up today. Yesterday's video, we'll have a sequel maybe next week where we go a little deeper into mind control, because I had done my mind control video. I wanted to call it a comprehensive video, but really ended up just being like 20th century Western mind control. Everything is as comprehensive as it can be, but I will need to go deeper into that, especially because some people are asking about what's going on in the future, things after the Flamin' Lips, and all that. So Just know we'll go to that. All right. Long lost ancient pyramid settlement discovered in Rote, Amazon region. Archaeologists using laser technology discovered settlement built by the Kasarabe culture at least 6 centuries ago. Found May 25th, 2022. Written by Alan Woodward. So a LiDAR image of Kataka, one of the centuries-old Kasarabe settlements discovered in the Bolivian Amazon And you can see there's pyramids, and similar kind of designs, actually, in a lot of ways, to the Egyptian pyramid design. Oh, dear. They don't want me to be able to read it. What is the button again? I go here, go here. There's a button for this. Advanced controls, block scripts. Were you able to see that trick? I hope you were. If you weren't, oh well. Did that work or no? Does that not work anymore? Interesting. What? No. Okay. Well, let's see what we can do about this. And then there's got to be a way to read this article without logging in. No. Really? That's absurd. Didn't we just have this article yesterday? All the way. How can they hide such a thing? There should be, like, right here, if I go to advanced controls and turn off block scripts, right? It should just allow you to read the thing. Text, print. How about that? Print button. Anything? Man, we are just fortune of fool right here. Anything? No. Wow. That's just crazy. Oh, well, I'm going to have to get that whole article for you guys from another source. I assumed I could just rip it open. Here we go. Here looks like most of something or other. This is from Glenn Patterson. Here's her continued information. See, there's always somebody somewhere who knows what's going on and is not trying to sell you. Vast settlements dating back to the Middle Ages and featuring earthen buildings and pyramids as tall as 8 stories. That's pretty interesting. Buildings have been discovered hidden in the Bolivian Amazon. Scientists said Wednesday in a paper published in the journal Nature. Well, they might have more there. There we go. Okay. Interconnected settlements in southern Amazonia. There have been no such evidence for pre-Hispanic Amazonia. Here we present LiDAR data of sites belonging to the Casarabe culture around 580 to 1400 AD in the Llanos de Moyos savanna forest mosaic, southwest Amazonia, revealing the presence of 2 remarkably large sites, 147 ha and 315 ha, in a dense 4-tiered settlement system. The Casarabe cultural area, as far as known today, spans approximately 4,500 kilometers squared, with one of the large settlement sites controlling an area of approximately 500 square kilometers. The civic ceremonial architecture of these large settlement sites includes stepped platforms on top of which lie U-shaped structures, rectangular platforms, mounds, and conical pyramids, which are up to 22 meters tall. The large settlement sites are surrounded by ranked concentric polygonal banks and represent central nodes that are connected to the lower ranked sites by straight raised causeway that stretch over several kilometers. Massive water management infrastructure composed of channels and reservoirs complete the settlement system in the anthropogenically modified landscape. Oh, this is totally off topic, but I wanted to say yesterday, really grateful to the mods and Memory Man doing a great job, Auntie Queenie doing a great job. But Memory Man, I noticed you stepped up and did a lot yesterday, so I just wanted to thank you. Keeping this chat working, because of course, most of the problems with my chat, and most of the problems getting with YouTube are, I think I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. So we got to make sure everyone in the chat plays nice. It looks like everyone's doing that right now. I want to thank you guys all for remembering that we're being spied on all the time, if you can call it that. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird to say you're being spied on when you're just talking loudly in someone else's building. So, all right. During the late Holocene epoch, pre-Hispanic agriculturalists in the Llanos de Moyos, Bolivia, transformed most extensive seasonal flooded Amazonian savannas, roughly the size of England, into productive agricultural and aquacultural landscapes. I wanted to bring this up also. I talked to the Airy brothers yesterday and did a chat on their show. So I hope you guys make time to go to the Airy Bros. I think it's tonight or tomorrow. I'm not sure when it airs. They might edit it or something. But it's going to be a really good episode. It's actually one of my favorite episodes I got to do so far in my life. So I think we talked about a lot of interesting things. But one of the things he asked about were something I hadn't really researched enough, And that has to do with the Great Wall of Peru. And so I'd seen information about this, but I hadn't really processed this as the Great Wall of Peru, something that he brought to my attention. And I've been to the Santa Valley, and I've seen, like the city of Chimnu, or Chanchan, like the Sun City, and I've been to all the places around Titicaca where they have great examples of their solar city, but somehow this is something that didn't really stick out to me as much. And you see this great wall with a bent star point, and it's all part of a hologonal star, but connected with all of these straight modular, look at these straight walled modular things. You can say whatever you want about star forts, but when someone builds a perfect cube, that's still impressive. Who's doing it and why? Why are they building perfect cubes instead of guided soft, whatever? They could build, a lot of places build these guided soft contours. So the Great Wall, photographed and described by the Shippey Johnson Aerial Expedition in 1931, followed the wall from the sea inland by air for about 40 miles, basically following the Santa River from the coast to the mountains. It was close to the ancient city of Chanchan, to Chimnu, and also Chavan, the hunter of the Chavan Empire. The regions included the region through which it passes is very mountainous, and the wall is located on the hillside of the valley. In its original form, it is estimated that the wall was 12 to 15 feet high, and every 20 feet in some places. Though it has deteriorated to about 7 feet today, it was also 12 to 15 feet thick. So you get the idea. This was a very serious wall. It wasn't quite the same as the Great Wall of China, where you could walk on it, and it was like 100 feet tall. This is a serious wall. You have to wonder why and what would drive you to build this giant freaking wall. It's all across 200 BC, all across Peru. And you see the ancient mud city of Chanchan. Well, it looks very Egyptian. I don't know what else to call the city of Chanchan. And the Sun City, unless you're trying to connect these earlier ideas. Now, something also to mention when we talk about our explanations of Peru, they might actually be slightly closer because they're later described than Egypt. Egypt really does throw us the dinosaur story about Egypt and says, okay, well, Egypt is this magical thing that I've discovered. It's really more interesting than anything else ever been discovered. Let me tell you about it. Egypt does that. Whereas Peru is really downplayed to the point that they pretend it's just aliens that were building it all the time, so they can't talk about, ancient aliens, so you can't talk about recent Tartarians, And we find plenty of evidence of there being crazy things. There's nothing more weird than Machu Picchu with its giant step design, but even that, looking at what is, people talk about what's there, what's left, this is not just, I don't believe in Machu Picchu being a modern recreation from all the pictures I've seen from being there myself and looking at the mountains itself. The mountains have definitely got their own aspect to this, because the stories are that the mountains were petrified giants, petrified titans, and things like that. So something to dig into. I'm going to save conversations about Machu Picchu mostly, though, because we do want to cover specifically the things that we had been worried about before, which were Deseret. So I do want to make sure I cover the Mohenjo-daro this week, though, so I should do this really quickly also. Last thing, then we're going to go into everything we said we were going to go into. Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan gave the first clue to the existence of more than 4,000 years of civilization in the Indus Valley, to rival those known in Egypt and Mesopotamia. These cities demonstrated an exceptional level of civic planning. Now, we've talked about Libya, the desert glass, this idea that glass is unusual from a volcano, but extreme quick heat turns things into glass. So the idea that something was shattered into glass is plausible. It's just unusual. And you look around other places, Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan, you find very similar situations. This beautiful city, lots of star shapes, cube shapes, and natural contours. Nothing more interesting than Mohenjo-daro. Giant ziggurat, massive violence. Was there a giant war? Was there really a giant war? And then we get into, mounds that hid a civilization. 1914, Western Archaeologist District in Bombay, Rikhaldis Banjari, director now of Mumbai, went to investigate a series of mountains near the town of Dokri in Sindh province, where he found out this wasn't a mountain, it was actually a series of ruins. And they wondered, could there have actually been people The same culture as the Harappa, some 680 kilometers away, 420 miles away, and the possibility was tantalizing. They started making connections, and there's so much to Mohenjo-daro and its ziggurat and its connection to mining communities and how old it may be. And again, it's in Pakistan, so it's on a location that never had an earthquake for thousands of years. And then all of a sudden, boom, the biggest earthquake the year that Pakistan started protesting against Western imperialism. Few years ago, it was 2012 or something. I forget when the giant Pakistani earthquake was, but it was just uncalled for, out of control. Mystery of the 44, around 1800 BC, things changed in the Indus Valley civilization. Archaeologist records indicate the city began falling into disrepair. Settlements were being abandoned. Standardized weights used for trade purposes appeared to fall out of use, and evidence of writing start to disappear. By around 1500 BC, the civilization all but collapsed. What happened to bring this immense civilization to an end? So you start to see, like, people are clinging on to what they remember, but this great civilization is gone. Well, in the utmost levels of the Mohenjo-daro, amidst the intermingling of residential and industrial buildings, archaeologists, under the direction of Sir John Marshall, unearthed several dozen sprawled skeletons or parts thereof lying scattered in streets and houses. The remains of 37 men, women, and children were found in total, while later excavations unearthed more, bringing the total to 44. Excavation reports describe them later as lying in a layer of rubble and debris in the streets in contorted positions that suggested violent death. Archaeologist Harold Hargreaves, who was responsible for excavation in the 1920s in southernmost excavation area of the city, wrote in an excavation report in the discovery of the skeletons appeared to indicate some tragedy, and the position of the bodies are those likely to be assumed in the agony of death. So, I mean, I can continue, but you get the point that they found some bodies. We consider it very similar to, like, you know, all of the, what is the one? Oh my God. The volcano with the bodies, Pompeii. It's like Pompeii, but we know that Pompeii's bodies are fake too. Like, they're plaster cast with wires in them a lot of the time, even when they were made in the 1800s. Yes, Pompeii is mostly fake. There is some real stuff, but, you know, Pompeii was like a Tijuana. It was like a party village. There were some people that lived there, mainly because of that. The downfall, what could have happened to the great civilization. I'm going to just skip ahead of this because I've got another page about it open already. Could it have been, you know, may disappear in 2 decades. I'll save this for the end of Mohenjo-daro because we're nearly done. Threatened by festival plans. Yeah, that actually goes in there too. So you get the clue what's going on. They're about to wipe it away. There's water, there's rain, there's rivers, there's environmentalism, there's people that have been visiting. And yeah, they're going to just wipe it out. It's not going to be there very soon. You're not going to be able to go back to Mohenjo-daro because, you know, UNESCO listed is about to become the venue for the Sindhu Festival. Okay, so the Sindhu Festival is a brainchild of the young leader of the Pakistan People's Party. All right, so they're probably going to tear out this old thing. Wooden steel scaffolding is currently being erected over and around the ruins. It's going to be completely just, you're not, you know, this whole civilization, yeah. Just so you know, you can't really expect there going to be much of Mohenjo-daro anymore. It's going to be built, it's going to be assimilated. And it's a great way, at least, it's terrible, but it's a great way to know. Also, this is 2014, so this is already done. It's a great way to know what happens to a place, why we don't know everything about a place. Well, yeah, because it's mixed in with people who live there, and it's not fair even really to say, oh, well, you just can't use this piece of property ever again. This whole city has to be abandoned forever so that English people can come look at it every once in a while. I mean, that's not fair either. So something has to be done to figure out how we can live with these ruins, but this is a serious issue. Mohenjo-daro has survived 5 millennia, but will probably disappear in 2 decades, and this was 2014, and we're now almost there. Okay, I think that's good. Did a nuclear war destroy Mohenjo-daro? That was what I wanted to get to. It's silly to talk about, but if you really read the Veda and the epic battles, they have these giant blasts with the suns burning, twirling in the sky. Trees went up in the air in flames. Overall destruction was so massive that corpses were burned to the point that they were completely unrecognizable. Those who managed to survive the blast, however, started to lose their hair and their nails while their food supplies got contaminated. All of these are allegedly a concise reference to radiation poisoning and nuclear fallout, which were written on texts that are over thousands of years old. Now, the Veda does talk about UFOs, burning clouds, planes that burn the oxygen in the sky, burn the sky itself as they enter, spinning, whirling dervishes. And yeah, nuclear war is a pretty close description. In fact, we don't even know if nuclear war is anything near what we think nuclear war is like. So realistically, nuclear war on TV is closer described, is a closer description to the Vedic wars. So, Mohenjo-daro could have been destroyed, was a beautiful green area. Now it's pseudo-desert, but things have started to reemerge. Greens continue to grow. There could be a lot to be said about this, that Mohenjo-daro was just wiped from the map, and what we have left is the basic foundation for where a lot of the walls would have gone. Thoughts to be had. Vitrified pottery. That's super hot. The heck kind of vitrified pottery is that? Yeah, so something to consider. Am I right, blog? Okay. We've done something about the Northern and the Levant hypothesis. I'm going to save the Proto-Semitic language and Afro-Asiatic homeland stuff for next time. Okay, so this is the Amazon rainforest bit. Let me just jump really quickly in here to Deseret. All right, so yesterday someone asked, I don't know if it was Benevolent Dreams or somebody else asked about the Deseret alphabet, the Mormon language. I wanted to cover that more right now. I'm gonna wait on the Japanese thing until we're distracted. The hidden Japanese thing we'll do second. Deseret language I can do maybe quicker. So the Deseret language, the Mormons wanted to have their own language, and they created the Deseret language. It looks like this. Here's another example. It says Deseret alphabet in Deseret alphabet. Deseret alphabet. Okay. A e a o u e a o u I u o u we u ye he pe be te de che g ka ga fe ve eth the se ze esh shi l m n or R, le, me, ne, and it's a phonetic alphabet. All right, it's the best I can do. I don't actually remember if that's the correct melody, but there's the Deseret alphabet for you. It's vertical a lot of the time. Some people read it left to right. It could be read vertical. It was written in books. This is the cover of 2 primer published in the Deseret alphabet during the life of Brigham Young. I'll tell you more about it. I just want to visualize for you a bit that Mormons were getting books and journals and things sent to their homes, and they read, and schools had children learning this, and they had this language they were trying to invent to separate their culture from Roman English culture. And here's, you can see some of the final book of the Mormon pioneers printed in the Deseret alphabet, a 3-part Book of Mormon on the left, the cover of the volume 1 on the right, the Deseret alphabet characters of the book, right? So here's one of the translation guides, because it's actually still in English. It's just the letters have been reinvented. Kind of interesting. Now they started to create more meanings as time went on, and they were going to change the language more, and it would have been easy to do because they knew a lot of Scandinavians, they knew a lot of new immigrants. They could have easily created a new language based on Scandinavian, whatever. But not everyone was ready. So what they would do is this. You have the language written in English, and then on the sides, vertically, right, you've got the Deseret alphabet right here. So people could read it in Deseret, and it encouraged you to, because you said, yeah, the normal people are reading this. What's this other stuff? This stuff's probably more interesting, right? I mean, I think it probably was. You ever Do you ever open? When I was a kid, I used to get like a electronic, like a toaster or an electric toaster microwave oven, and you'd read the manual. And then I was just looking around because I almost feel like there should almost always be a manual nearby to something. But the English page will be like, turn on the thing. Don't burn your fingers. Be careful, you dumb American. And then you go to the Chinese or the Japanese section of it's just hundreds of pages. And you're wondering, what are they teaching me in the Japanese section of my PlayStation manual or whatever, or my Hello Kitty toaster? It's like the American version says don't burn your fingers, but the Japanese version is telling you, how to find peace in your soul and whether or not to use certain kinds of flaxseed oils instead of butters. And maybe that's an exaggeration. My point being, it feels like that. It feels like the American English is a limitation of information. And right there in front of you, there's a bunch of other letters that you can't read. So that means they can say whatever they want right here. I mean, this could be really interesting stuff. I don't know what it says. So here's an example of what a Wikipedia page looks like. I don't want to go too deep for you if that's too complicated to imagine. But imagine a Wikipedia page in Deseret, because here it is. This is what it would look like if you were a Mormon on Wikipedia back in the Brigham Young period. And it would have been cool. And I would have been for it. I have no problem with people inventing new languages, inventing new alphabets. I think they could have invented a new language. It would have taken 20 more years, and it would have happened. But the Mormons didn't do that. The Mormons went on to learn everybody else's language, to try to convert everyone else, and to make their Bible in everyone else's language. And realistically, the Book of Mormon and the Bible, which the Mormons print the Bible and hand out for free to everybody around the world. And you can just call them up and be like, hey, can I get a copy of the Bible? They're like, yeah, sure. And they'll send you a Bible in English or in Pidgin or, like whatever you want. They'll print your Bible for you. So they've done a pretty interesting thing here by moving past this idea. But what was the deal? Why would you create this language? What's the whole story? Who the heck was George D. Watt? Let's just do it. Okay. And you know what? Just really quickly, here's George D. Watt, looking kind of adorable with his big old bag of pants. And I think his jacket might be fur. That looks like a fur coat, just so you know. Okay. Baptized in the British Isles. So many of these guys we were telling you about, these English men who became Mormons, Latter-day Saints. And again, if you were from Indiana, you might be able to get back to your family. But if you're from Manchester and you become convinced that the world started in Missouri, you're out on your own. So the Missouri War especially led to a group of Brits who were so hand over fist, gung-ho for Mormonism under the Council of Brigham Young. And I'm not going to make this all about Brigham Young because, again, there's other things to talk about today, and we'll do a thing on Brigham Young at some point. But Brigham is very important. And you'll find him come up over and over again. I don't want to say anything too rude about him either, so I'm just going to try to be as objective as possible. I mean, I'm going to say, though, he was a polygamist. He was pro-polygamist. He had at least 55 wives. He instituted a ban prohibiting conferring the black priesthood on the men of black African descent. And he did a lot of things that are no longer part of the LDS movement today. He was at the time also after a war where women and children were being murdered in Missouri. It's important to remember the time period. But he took over the church when they were looking for someone very strong to take over the church, to be fair. And here are the 5 sons of John and Nabby Young. Okay. Portrait, delivering the law of the Lord, Brigham Young, again in 1857. So you start to see more and more pictures of the man. A beardless Brigham Young in 1853, 1855. Portrait of Ira Eldridge with his 3 wives, Nancy Black Eldridge, Hannah Maria Savage Eldridge, and Helvig Marie Anderson Eldridge. Ira was a bishop of the Sugar House ward in the time. Okay, so here he is over here. Here's his 3 wives. And, They seemed pretty stoked at the time. I don't know. So there's a lot to be said about the Mormon war period and what America was like. And here's a caricature of the young wives after the death of Brigham Young. So, who's to say what's real? I don't think it really worked like this, where they were all in one room at the same time. I think they had a number of different rooms and houses even. But, this is not a new thing. It's weird that America picked on the Mormons so much for something that today, if you're Islamic, you're allowed to do and have always been, up to 5 wives, I think 4 or 5 wives. And if you've seen my Try LDS video, I've said, I think 1 is more than enough with marriage, and that's kind of the problem with this idea of polygamy. It's not so much that they were like saying, we really want to have so many arguments with our wives that there are just more wives to argue with. No, it's that so many of the women and children were murdered. So many of the men more were murdered. And then you've got women and children without, men left. And so marrying the women guaranteed that there would be continual generations of LDS, and that these women weren't just spinsters. So it's important to remember that this was a limited period in the church. It was only for about 10 years, and it was literally right after they'd been genocided in Missouri. So something to consider about the polygamous aspect of the temporaneous aspect of polygamy in the Mormon church. Okay, so George D. Watt, who was involved with Freemasonry and had left to join the Latter-day Saints, said he did not trust Freemasons, trusted Brigham Young, was a linguist, not quite an expert. I don't know if they say that, what he used to do. Manchester, Latter-day Saints, his brother had joined the church, had written about James New Church, Latter-day missionaries, baptized. He was a relatively educated guy, not too dumb. And he'd gone and done some Scotch missionary trips, and he'd went back to join in the hand. He used his skill at Pitman shorthand, a shorthand English language, like secretaries use in courts and things. And in 1850, returned to America and joined the new gathering of Latter-day Saints in Salt Lake City in Utah. Right? So during the war, the Missouri Wars, he actually was able to escape at the end of them, really, into Scotland. And then he came back, right, as a very important British expert in Mormonism. In Utah, Watts worked with a reporter for the Deseret News as a private clerk. And this still exists? Or no, they just stopped it. That's a tragedy. In 2020, I think it stopped printing. But it was Utah's oldest continuous published newspaper. So something to look into is the Deseret News. And it uses that symbol of the honeycomb. By the way, in case you're curious more just about what Deseret means, right? And we can think of desert and everything. But no. This is an unincorporated community. I need the state of Deseret. So ideologically, Mormons wanted to create a state that would have covered most of this area. Now, it would have also covered a lot of California. This is just some of the proposals in 1849. Really, they would have wanted California. They would have wanted Oregon and Washington. They would have wanted Idaho. And it was going to be, into Arizona, into maybe even Oklahoma and Kansas. So the how big we're talking would have extended. But their thought was, well, after the Missouri War, we're on this side now. We know because this used to be we talked about this Western Interior Seaway. The Western Interior Seaway would have put them on the east coast of the old Americas, but because of the war, they decided, well, we're not necessarily on the east coast anymore, so let's end up on the west coast. Man, all these pictures want me to download them. That's terrible. Let me just try to get you one that can stay there for you for a second. Anything? If I do this? No? Nothing? You get the point. They would have been over here somewhere, and then they're over here somewhere, okay? But the thing is, they've been pushed together. There's more land, so they're saying, well, maybe what we're supposed to get, according to the biblical representation of after the flood, after Moses, that we go to the promised land. The promised land is outside of where we used to be. Maybe that's really what we're supposed to do. Is that going to work? Yeah. Somebody tried to make a map. Okay, so this would have closed up together. And they said, okay, well, maybe we're not going to be in Missouri anymore because when we got there, we were killed and our women and children were killed. Maybe it's a sign from God. So we're going to try something else. We're going to go to Deseret. Where's my Deseret stuff? State. For the love of God. Yeah, I think this is all I got. I just wonder how I close things so quickly. No, there it is. Okay, I had it already. Calm down, Andreas. Okay, so proposed in Black Outline. Now, what we know about the Mormons' involvement in the Civil War and in several American-Spanish wars and, et cetera, American-Mexican War, is that they made deals with the United States in exchange for territorial preservation. And that's why you have Mormon temples in Beverly Hills, Washington, D.C. San Diego, Los Angeles. Washington, D.C. is a separate issue. But, you look at some of these, but I think there might be a story there that connects it. I just meant that California, really, a lot of this major property, major temples in San Diego and Beverly Hills. I mean, it's crazy in Beverly Hills that there's a temple, right? There's not a lot of temples in Beverly Hills. There's a few, there's a lot of mansions. There's no apartments in Bel Air. You know what I mean? So it's interesting what they did. Okay, so Deseret would have been this state, and in a lot of ways, Utah, you can see how Utah is almost entirely there, and so was Idaho. And Arizona would have been part of it as well. And it took a lot of time to get to the point where they would have really, Nevada would have been completely there. Now, Nevada became a prostitute hub with gambling and everything else. And so the Mormons, you would have thought they would have said, no, we don't want anything to do with that. Well, they went in and they actually built a lot of Las Vegas. And you look at the connections in Las Vegas and the infrastructure there. The Mormons have actually been biding their time in Nevada to end up in control of Nevada. And I'm not going to do anything too deep in the Mafia Mormonism connection right now because I just want to keep these videos online. So we're going to we'll take that one as it comes. But that's an interesting thing. Also, is there are connections between the Latter-day Saints, Brigham Young, and the Mafia, right? Like that is what it is. So let me see here. Going back to Deseret language, where's the Deseret alphabet? Well, yeah, here we'll start with just Watt. So he worked in the newspaper reporting for the Deseret News, and eventually in 1852 was appointed by Brigham Young to a committee that was in charge of creating a new phonetic alphabet that would assist non-English speaking Latter-day Saints immigrants learn English. The result was the Deseret alphabet. Now, I don't know if that was actually the correct reason or how that came to be, but that's officially the story. Although the alphabet was largely a failure, Watt remained a strong promoter of the language system. In 1869, Watt was disfellowshipped from the LDS Church for following the teachings of a dissident, William S. Godbey, known as starting the Godbeites or the Church of Zion. Watt was identified as one of the leaders of the Godbeites. That is just a whole other slew of things we're going to have to look into. And the discipline from the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, although Watt was initially repentant and desired to return to the full fellowship of the LDS Church, by 1874 he was devoted Godbeite and was excommunicated by the LDS Church in 1874. Later, Watt tried to return to the LDS Church. 4 times he attempted to rejoin the church, but was denied because his beliefs differed from those of the LDS Church. Upon his last visit to the church, President John Taylor, Watt said, "President Taylor, I want you to know that if anything happens to me before I am reinstated in the church, it is your responsibility." Watt died in Kaysville, Utah Territory at the age of 65. Estranged from the LDS Church and its leaders, Watt's obituary describes him as a honest, truthful, and sincere, although perhaps misguided, being a self-made man of strong character and have exercised vast influence. There is not a little in his career which is just remarkable. Okay, I mean, Taylor made a special trip to the home, saying that he should be buried in his temple robes. He had plural marriage, 6 wives. One of his wives, Jane Brown, was his half-sister. They shared a mother, Mary Ann Wood. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting things going on with them. Now let's get into the Godbeites for just a quick second. And make sure I don't forget to have a tab open for the alphabet. William Samuel Godbey, creator of the Godbeites, born in Middlesex, England, a music professor, to Samuel Godbey and music professor Sarah Laviere, a descendant of French Huguenots. Godbey was one of the least of the at least 5 children. His father died when he was 11. His uncle was an engineer, took him and taught the boy his trade. Attracted to the classics and travel and literature. By his early teens, he earned a living on the sea. Okay. Experienced sailor, traveled to Western Europe, visited Constantinople, shores of Brazil, and Africa. He became bound to a captain. After retiring from the sea, worked the docks at Kingston upon Hull. In Hull, Godbey encountered Parley P. Pratt, an LDS missionary, and by 1850, Godbey was baptized. So he got into this idea, was kind of convinced that the Mormons knew some stuff, and then he said, wait a second, I've been all over these places. I've been all over the world. I think I know these places better than Joseph Smith does. And Joseph Smith was dead. So, he's like, maybe I got something to offer to the church. So, they didn't agree. He started his own church, walked away, and a bunch of people came with him. Other Mormon merchants began criticizing the economic demands and policies of Brigham Young, who demanded 10% of their tribune through the order of the Melchizedek priesthood, right? Because the Aaronic priesthood didn't, and then the Melchizedek did. Godbey traveled with his friend and architect, publisher, and fellow Latter-day Saint Elias L.T. Harrison on an extended business trip to New York. At the time, both men were beginning to question their beliefs in the LDS Church, especially the idea that the church president, whom members looked to as God's prophet on earth, was infallible. He also met Alexander Humboldt, German polymath who you know of Humboldt Bay in California, Humboldt, California, Humboldt County, Humboldt in Chile. There's a lot of Humboldts around, from his exploring. So got really more and more interested in spiritualism, and I think you could say Godbey was fascinated with Western Geistian Hegelian dialectical philosophy. And something that really helped make Godbeites more interesting is their interest in the Geist, in Hegelian concepts. So the formation of the Liberal Party Utah, he thought you need to really be careful about the church controlling this church controlling everything. Latter-day Saints should be separation of church and state still. And Liberal Party of Utah to oppose LDS candidates in political election, because he thought, hey, by this point, it's no longer controlled by Joseph Smith. Now you got this Brigham Young group, and they're not really Joseph Smith. That's his official opinion. So the party, however, fell out of control of Godbeite, and other people took over. It became increasingly anti-Mormon instead of reform-minded. And that was that's still a problem today. The Liberal Party of Utah, right? I don't know if they're still called that. There's a new equivalent. And in general, we have Republicans and Democrats that are taking over that place. But Utah has a huge... people just love to move to Utah just to get in fights with Mormons. It's really weird. I have some friends. I should interview my friend Wiley Schultz, who's brilliant and a chemist and an atheist. And he moved to Utah. And it's like, okay, why? Not because you're trying to change. Just being obtuse. Anyway, it's beautiful there. That's the most important thing. So they had these groups of people who said, we don't need to be part of the main church. We're going to have our own Godbeite church. And he, in 1899, he was the Populist Party candidate for mayor of Salt Lake City. Although without illusion of winning the election, he enjoyed entering progressive politics again. Godbey remained in Salt Lake City in spite of being a social outcast both by the Latter-day Saints and from non-Mormons, alarmed with his continued practice of polygamy. It's weird how that was such a big deal. I just don't get it. It's like, it's not today, I don't think, right? Like, there was a guy who was talking about these kids in their school. They said this kid had 2 mommies, and everyone was so excited to find out. They thought his moms were lesbians, and then they're like, no, his dad's Muslim is all. And so it's just continually like we're shocked and appalled by the differences in people. Thank God it's now this post-California subjective moralism period, and now we're able to move past it. Anyway, the Godbeite, spiritualism, mysticism, state of Deseret. We're almost done. Let's get to the Deseret alphabet, and then we'll do the hidden Christians to Japan. So, Deseret, language, alphabet, created, transformation in society, utopian idealism, orthography, years are blah, 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 blah. I want to also just really quickly connect Cherokee language. by Sequoia, not e-language, actual language. Cherokee language, and Sequoia Cherokee. I think I spelled that wrong. It's my cousin's. No, great. So my cousin's name is spelled like Sequoia, not like the tree. That's an easy way for me to remember. So Sequoia, also known as George Gist or George Guess, was a Native American polymath, right? And so working in syllabary, and you want to see some of the examples of the Cherokee script, okay? And you want to see some of the examples of the Deseret script. Did I go too far back? How far back do I have to go? Boom. You can start to see really quickly that the Cherokee and the Sequoia script are actually weirdly similar. Now, they're not exact or anything like that, but they really are weirdly similar, and you have to wonder what that's about. Again, it's not Joseph Smith who made the Deseret language, but you have even better, really highly educated people that have been all over the world, have learned different languages, have studied different languages, have lived in Arabian ports, of Portuguese cities. They understand language in a new way. And let's also compare this with Glagolitic. So the Croatian language and the Glagolitic script. Now, the main thing you can say is ours is just better. Croatian just looks cooler. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a fact. But, if you were to say they were similar, you could. There really are a lot of similarities here between the invented Deseret language alphabet and the Cherokee language. I accidentally closed that. I'll save that for later. Well, the invented Deseret alphabet and the Cherokee language, which is here, and you can see it has, clearly been also influenced. The Cherokee language has clearly been influenced by Western symbols as well, which you can go into. But let's move forward. In the Zograf Codex, with the Gospel of Luke, showing you how Croatian script is a little better, but still has a lot of similar ideas in terms of curves and these backwards G's and things like that. There's a lot of really similar things there, and you can tell. The reason is because they're incorporating ideas from Etruscan and from Turkish, from the Byzantine. So it has Phoenician, it has Hebrew, it has Latin, it has everything. And that is that's like almost exactly what happened to create the Deseret alphabet. Okay, in public statements, Young said the alphabet was intended to replace the Latin alphabet with alternatives, more phonetically accurate alphabet for the English language. This would offer immigrants an opportunity to learn and to read and write English. He said and I think this is a fair thing, Germans, French, very confused about the rules using the same alphabet differently. So he thought maybe there's a completely new alphabet that just followed the rules easily. Maybe if there's a letter that made the th sound, and we didn't have all these combinations that we had to do to make it Americanized noises, that it would be easier on people. So he started saying, hey, what do you know about the Shavian alphabet? And then they said, okay, well, we could use something with the Shavian alphabet. Well, so George Bernard Shaw. Wait, no, is this later? No. Is it? I thought this is in the 1860s from George Bernard Shaw. Oh, no, it's later. Excuse me. Similarly, George Bernard Shaw did this later, almost 40 years later. So, sorry, I was going to say it was almost based on it, but maybe the other way around. Maybe George Bernard Shaw kind of based his language on Mormon, and I doubt it, knowing the guy. So we'd have to look into that more. And I want to save that for another time. But he did this. He wrote in his own version of current shorthand and invented his own language. So this was a popular idea at the time. Deseret language was an outgrowth of Young's early idealism and utopianism. Kimball, Pratt, Young University, before they went on. Used by Mormon pioneers. Here's the book example. Now, I wanted to show you one. I think I already showed you one where part of it was in English, and you see it on the side of it. But yeah, there's a decline that starts to happen. Despite years of heavy promotion, the Deseret alphabet was never widely adopted. The reluctance was partially due to the prohibitive cost. The project had already cost the early church an estimated $20,000 at that time, which I'm only assuming in the 1860s was a lot, with $6,000 going to Pratt as remunerations for his transcript effort, and most of the rest going to cutting metal type, featuring the new alphabet and printing costs. In 1859, Orson Pratt estimated the cost of supplying all Utah Territory school children with school textbooks would have been over $5 million. According to Beasley, many have written that interest in the Deseret alphabet died with Brigham Young. This, however, is not true. The alphabet was already regarded as a failure during Young's life. Only 500 copies of the full Book of Mormon translated Deseret alphabet sold for $2 each, and even Young realized that the venture was too expensive, and even the most devout Mormon could not be convinced to purchase and study the Deseret edition books over the books in their traditional orthography. In the winter of 1870, just 1 year after publication, advertisements for the Deseret alphabet books were quietly removed from the Deseret News. Contemporary writers noted that thousands of copies of the 15-cent and 20-cent Deseret primers went unsold. And historian Robert Vance speculated that the LDS Church at the time had a cache of the primers in mint condition, which it was slowly selling off, according to him. One such primer sold for $250 in 1978. The Mormons had planned to use the profits from the sale of the earlier books to fund printing of more books, and in anticipation, Orson Pratt had already transcribed the complete Bible, Doctrine and Covenants, and Jean-Jacques' Catechism for Children into Deseret. Pratt had also prepared an apparent sequel to the primers, the Deseret Phonetic Speller. After the sales failure, however, none of these books were ever published, and were thought lost until being rediscovered in a storage area of the LDS Church archives in Salt Lake City in May 1967. Okay, so what does that really tell us? Could it be that there's more to the design of this language? I mean, is it really just English with the letters misused from another language? I mean, how much do we really know based on the Glagolithic? The words in the border are gibberish, it says. An 1876 campaign ticket for the People's Party of Utah, the Deseret type is recycled to make a border. The words in the border are gibberish. Well, are they gibberish, or is this in an older Glagolithic script? And it seems like it might actually be. It's something that we'll have to look into more. The Mormons have planned to use profits from the sale. Okay. Transcontinental radio rediscovery in the computer era. Okay, modern digital typography has reduced the cost of typesetting substantially, especially for small print runs. As long as a freely licensed Deseret alphabet font and a font of the standard orthography have linked inked surface area, printing a book in the Deseret alphabet using modern technology would have a similar cost as printing a book in the standard orthography. Film director Trent Harris used the Deseret alphabet in his 1994 satire of the Mormon theology, Plan 10 from Outer Space, where it features an alien language used on a mysterious plaque of Kolob. During the 1996 Utah Centennial Celebration, an activity book for children was distributed. Within it, one of the activities was for children to write their own name in the Deseret alphabet. The book says that the children who does this will be the first kid in 100 years to write their name in the Deseret alphabet. Also, in 1986, the Buffalo River Press published a reprint of the Deseret first books, of which only 10,000 were originally printed. The entire Book of Mormon in the Deseret alphabet has likewise been reprinted, as only 500 copies from the original print run exist, and they can sell on eBay for up to $7,500 as of 2004. In 1997, John Jenkins uploaded a free 3-part PDF of the so-called triple combination, that is, Combined Book of Mormon, Doctrines of Covenants, and Pearl of Great Price in the Deseret alphabet. John Jenkins has gone on to publish many classic pieces of English literature in the Deseret alphabet, such as Alice in Wonderland, Pride and Prejudice, and The Wizard of Oz. Owing to the character set's inclusion in Unicode, most of the original books and many of the original manuscripts have been transcribed into plain text. And when this is not possible due to discrepancies between Unicode references and glyphs in documents, latex. Fonts. You can get the Deseret font. You can learn how to, if you wanted to start writing in Deseret, information wants to be free. This is information wants to be free. Free. This is an E sound. Okay, so you can kind of get the idea of how this language works. This is an I, this is an F, P, and formation. Okay, so interesting uses of the phi symbol almost, or a sideways phi, which looks like a ka. I don't know. I mean, the problem with me is I'm just going to look at all these things and remember what other languages those symbols look like. So trying to get used to it would take a minute. Free software by Google. Different versions, representation of the E sound. Deseret alphabet does not have a distinct symbol in the mid-central vowel. Schwa, the lack of a schwa has been stated as the biggest phonological flaw in the alphabet. Because of the lack of a schwa, the author must write the sound that would be proposed if the word was stressed. For example, the word enough is commonly pronounced enough, but when it is stressed, as in a declaration irritation, is pronounced enough. The Deseret spelling of the word reflects the stress pronunciation does not have an inherent stress value in a word. Okay. Something to wonder about there. Deseret cursive and handwritings, block letters, design criticism. Here we go. While well-intentioned, the lack of the Deseret alphabet was purposefully designed as to not have ascenders or descenders. This was envisioned as a practical benefit for the alphabet in an era of metal type. After many uses, the edge of type sorts became dull and narrow, and ascenders and descenders are most prone to this effect. While well-intentioned, this lack has been described as a catastrophic mistake that makes type look monotonous. It makes all words look alike. Some have drawn comparisons between the alphabet and the Old Turkic script, saying that the writing in the new alphabet could be mistaken afar as a Turkish tax list. Okay, so immediately the connections to Old Turkic stand out, right? And it literally follows the same rules. Something that we're going to have to get into, Old Turkic script, which was a Turkic rune system for the Gok Turks to write in essentially Aramaic. This is the Old Turkic language, but what we understand about the Old Turkic language at the time is it's a Proto-Aramaic. So something to look into here that we're going to have to go into more. I'll save that for next time because I do want to get us to the hidden Christians. Okay, so that was Deseret. You guys now know a little bit more about Deseret. Memory Man, also, just again, saw you there. Want to say thank you for doing all the work you're doing in modding, and it's a lot of work and it's crazy. Okay, so Nant Queenie as well, and recent Tartarians and everybody who's helping. But I did talk about the hidden Christians, so I was going to cover them. People wondered, like, how could Japan be covered in Christians and what happened? So let me just start that story. Hidden Christian sites in Nagasaki region is a group of 12 sites in Nagasaki Prefecture related to the history of Christianity in Japan. And we'll open that in a second. As you know, Christianity actually has existed for a long enough time for it to exist in Japan. And if we go to history, missionaries, 1549, you'll start seeing pictures of Jesuits burned upside down all the time. And that's what happened in Japan. There's a movie about that and a book called Silence by Endo. There's a movie based on the book. Highly recommend reading the book. Highly recommend watching the movie. It's very important. It probably is hard for some people to watch because of the suffering of people, but it really is important. It talks about the defeat of the Shimabara rebellion and the Kakuri Krishitan, right? And Kakuri Krishitan, hidden Christians, a modern term for members of the Catholic Church in Japan that went underground starting at the Edo period in the early 17th century due to Christianity's repression by the Tokugawa shogunate. All right? And you'll find examples like this guy here. You can't tell, but he turned it around. Oh, no. Yeah, you can. His chest has a cross, right? And that's the hidden Christian. So people thought they were just normal Buddhists, but they were hiding their symbols. And, the Virgin Mary with the Mother Jesus, and, Maria Kanon, a connection with Christian worship, Adehwa, porcelain Ganyan bringing child, the Jion Mamori crest of the Jion Shrine, adopted by the Kakuri Krishitan as their crest under the Tokugawa shogunate. So turn your head just slightly sideways to see the cross. But you'll see this was the symbol of the hidden Christians for a long time. So what's the deal with that? You got all these crazy... what's this? Iberian Christians, Maz Arabs. We're going to have to look at that. I'll save that for tomorrow. But you're looking at the Kakuri Christians and you see, hey, there's how many Christians really were there? I mean, apparently now there still are leftover hidden Christians, you're saying, right? I mean, this Kakuri Christian group, just had it open. Hidden Christian sites, there's UNESCO is still protecting the church sites of the Nagasaki and all this. Well, what's the deal with that? You can go and watch documentaries. If you type in Kakuri Krishitan, let me go back one more page. If you type in Kakuri Krishitan, I bet you'll find interviews of people from 2008 If I can find that, that'd be great. The unique beliefs of the hidden Christians, meeting the descendants of the hidden Christians. You can find a lot of things on these people. And it really traumatized me when I first heard about the Kukuri Christians, because as a Catholic, you got all these people that decided they were going to be Catholic. They're going to believe in, you come over there and you missionize and you tell them that you believe in something, and then they believe it too, because, what are you going to do? And then they start getting tortured and crucified by drowning over week-long periods, and forced to spit on their religious superstitious symbols. And these aren't just intellectual Portuguese college kids, the Jesuits. These are fishermen a lot of the time that they've wrapped up into this whole thing. But regardless, you'll find out when you start looking into the hidden Christians that maybe half of Japan, at least a third of Japan, was Catholic, and maybe half of Japan died in this period. And we've got 16th century Japanese wiping out half of the population, 18th century half of the Japanese wiping out half of the population, World War I, huge amounts of Japanese deaths in China and dealing with Russia. Huge, and half of Japan wiped out arguably during World War II. Just in considering all the men who died, all of the different soldiers who died, lack of food, different villages, women and children sick in zones that were completely wiped out. What we know about Japan is very different than what we knew before the 1600s. So something that came up yesterday, and you should definitely just watch yesterday's episode with Ewan Jr. We talked a bit about the Ainu people, right? And the Ainu people are a group of immigrants to Japan from before the Asians immigrated to Japan. I don't know how better to put that for you. They have Turkish outfits. They have lots of weird patterns on their robes, lots of weird arabesques, mustaches, big wide eyes, facial hair, and European features. Here's Russia, here's China, here's Japan. Half of Japan is under China, half of Japan's above China in Russia, right? So when you really start to recognize the logic here that they've come across, that they've dealt with these islands, and they've got, there's going to be a ton of this group of people. And what happened to them? Well, 1843, there's a lot less left, right? And by today, a lot of them have been assimilated and look more and more Japanese, right? This starts to happen where they're becoming Japanese, right? And so that's reasonable. You live in a place, you intermingle. That'll happen after centuries of whatever. But you can see the clothes, and you can see the connections to Persian clothes, to Haida clothes, and these kinds of patterns really stick out when you start following patterns. You can see this is not just what everybody in Japan wears, right? So that's something to consider about the Ainu. There's a lot of other people than just the Ainu. And let's see, Isashi, is that right? Previously, is this what it was? I think Isashi or Oshu, right? Dominated the region in the Heian period, right? And so this is something we talked about yesterday, the 700s, the Islamic period, the Heian period of Japan, where they introduced all sorts of new things to their culture, including the katana and, the katakana phonetic language, And the use of phonetic languages from the Phoenicians during the 700s makes enough sense, plus also the name of a city. After you have Musashi, which is Musashi is the where's places? Yeah, an old province. Musashi, which is what Tokyo used to be part of. Musa means Moses, and then Isa means Esau or Jesus, or Esau. Like, it depends on our argument yesterday, but that's something to consider, is that Japan was influenced by these Christians. And then all of a sudden you have this period of rejection of Christianity, which, again, you can read Silence to find out how this began and how terrified the Christians were to find out that Japan, of all places, was rebelling against Catholicism. So from Islam into Catholicism, into the rebellion of outside forces and the isolation period of Japan, into the creation of the hidden Christians. And, simultaneously, ironically, is the Mozarabs right? I mean, they exist into the 1600s until Spain goes. From 1492, you've got North Spain is Christianized, but South Spain is not. So it continues on into the 1600s. So the hidden Christians continue to worship their symbols. And I remember what really bothered me, but in a weird way makes me sleep better at night now, was knowing how when this lady did an interview in 2008 and she went around the islands of Hokkaido and she interviewed some of the families who didn't even really understand what had happened, right? Because they'd been hiding this from their own families and not talking about it. But they knew it was really important for their family that they went to their shrine and they did their worship. It's just their worship shrine was very different than other people's, and it had to be kept secret. They'd completely forgotten 400 years of this, and just know that they could be put to death and killed for it, and that their God wanted them to keep it quiet. And so I heard the prayer mumbling, this monk mumbling a prayer of Portuguese, the Our Father prayer, and it was just really trippy because it wasn't perfect, but he was so close. Like and it was never written down. Just for 400 years, this little island, someone had been memorizing what their father had been saying, what their father had been saying, and they almost remembered what this Portuguese missionary had said 400 years ago, and they'd been holding on to it. And then they broke open these balls of rice, these rice wads, and shared them with some sake. And I realized this was the Eucharist, that they knew the Eucharist, that they were doing the Eucharist in the proper prayer. And the other thing was, he was holding a piece of this thread that came from this original black robe that had belonged to the priest. And it had gotten down to the small bit because they were taking just a little tiny bit of the thread and giving it to everyone when they died. That priest who was maybe 80 years old in 2008, 90 years old in 2008, he was going to finally get to be buried or burnt or whatever, I think buried, with a little piece of the 400-year-old priest's robe. And it was getting smaller and smaller shreds until very soon there won't be any left to give. And, talking to some Catholics, they might say, oh, well, this guy, too bad for them because he wasn't a real priest, and so he wouldn't be really able to do the correct Eucharist. It wouldn't have actually been the correct Eucharist. And to them I say, you're not Catholic. No, those guys in Japan, these hidden Christians, they're the real Catholics. Catholicos means universalism. So trying to create this excuse to exclude, it just proves that the people today in charge of the church are no longer accurately Catholic. That there are some Catholics out there. I think you could say I am a Catholic and the Vatican is not. But yeah, that's a serious issue that we need to make sure that we recognize, is that it's not the word itself, it's the organization that's co-opted the word that's misusing the word. And the word itself is actually good. Catholicism means universalism, so being able to open yourself up to this universal path. And it's interesting, of all the things that they were talking about, was it sin? Was it confession? Was it paying off a priest? And they have, this is not Lutheranism. There's no war over there because the Catholic Church lost power. So what are the things they're trying to say? Well, Jesus' story is that he had, he's going to die. He saw it coming. It was pretty obvious. He wasn't popular with the status quo. And he has a dinner party with his friends. And he says, hey, it's really good to have dinner with you guys. Hope you guys remember me because, I'm going to die. This is my body, my blood, etc. So the Eucharist. The Eucharist is Yeshua's last thing, allegedly, is that really matters to him. He's like, I just want to have dinner with you guys and make it matter. And that becomes the most important ritual in the entire religion. More than confession, more than war, more than crusades, more than jihad or anything like that, or meditation. It's this idea of the Eucharist, of sharing in the spirit, the communal spirit, with your friends and family, right? And if that's the thing that's lasted in Japanese Kushuritō Christianity, like the hidden Christians, and you can watch an episode from Samurai Champloo on the hidden Christians as well. This is not just, there's tons of people talking about this. Watch the Scorsese film. But you will find, I think, a little bit of solace. I found when I realized that the Eucharist had survived after all of this. Okay, so I hope that's enough for today. We'll go into deep stuff on Monday. It's Friday. I got to get out there. It's a sunny day. Love you guys very much. See you soon. Where's my button?
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.